What is good, Josh on this full game, man? It's your boy Shot Too Smooth, back with another Anime Tuesday for you guys, man. Today we're getting into a different anime. Normally we're on like Naruto. Excuse the beeping, y'all. I gotta go to the store to change that light bulb. If you guys haven't heard the recent videos, it'll be gone soon. But not light bulb, I mean battery. But today we're going to go into something that I actually just finished and fully caught up on, Kaiju No.8. Now, I'm going to get my thoughts and opinions on the video on it first before we jump into today's video. I think it was a fantastic anime. I see why it's up there for next gen anime big 3. I think the fighting in it was crazy. Now, a little bit of it had me kind of a little bit concerned. Like, I'm one of those people where if you're going to be the main character, I kind of like when you're strong beyond belief, right? So some of the animes that I would say like embody that. I mean, obviously Naruto wasn't really losing too many fights. There's a couple of situations where he had you on the ropes, but you knew he was going to come through. But even more so, like something like Misfit, the Academy of the Misfit Demon King. If you guys have ever seen that anime, I've watched the full thing. One of my favorite, or like Plunderer. Two of my favorite animes that are like non-mainstream. That's for me, the main character was just that dude. Like when I watched Misfit Demon King, I would sit back and almost laugh when people would just like discredit him, and like he would just sit there and be so calm and then casually beat them without even lifting a finger. Like that, to me, that's what a main character should be every single time in a fighting anime. Like, yes, there's gonna be strong enemies. Okay, if they get beat one time, let them come back and figure it out. But in that beginning storytelling part, I need to know that that's that dude. And there was a couple of times with Kaiju No.8 during the beginning where I was like, okay, look, he looking kind of weak. Or even when he got his powers and he wasn't wanting to show him, I'm like, why? Just, you know, he's showed the ability to transform part of his body before. Why was he not transforming parts of his body to do certain things to make himself at least look a little bit better? But then when he fully transformed and fully started dominating, and then even when he was holding back in that final fight before, obviously, or the season ended against the girl's dad, you know, he still looked like a dog throughout the whole fight, knowing he's holding back and still able to really keep pace. And then finally, almost losing himself completely, dog walks him, and then is able to bring himself back and gain even more control over his power. That to me was top tier. So the ending made up for the slow little bit beginning, but the beginning still had great comedy, great storytelling, and great, I think, side character development. It really made me root for, like, almost kind of like how they had the Konoha 12. It kind of felt like there was that, you know, Division 3, not like 12, because what was it, like 6 other people, I think. Yeah, because everybody had basically a pair of rivals. I mean, it might have been 5. So you had the white haired dude with the red haired dude. You had the two dudes that are basically kind of on top. The one that was like a former military, and the other one who, what was it, his dad didn't really like him or something like that. Those two, and then you had the girl. I feel like there was another one, but I can't remember off the top of my head. But at least those 5, and then obviously Kafka. So that to me just seemed like a great dynamic to build up those side characters and really start developing that. And it's going to be sad to see that they're all going to kind of go in different directions. But I did not know he was getting a new form. Now, I am going to admit I am anime only. I don't really read mangas like that. I have people around me that do and kind of tell me stuff because I'm not one to shy away from spoilers. So I really don't care about spoilers. You can tell me all the spoilers you want to. I'm ready to see it. It's going to get me more excited to watch those next couple episodes because I want to see it get to that point. So hopefully this shows me something with this new form because I didn't know about a new form. So let's see what he's talking about. This is Kafka's new form is broken. So obviously from Kaiju No.8. So let me know what you guys think about Kaiju No.8 down below in the comment section. I want to hear what you guys feel about it. Where is it at in your list of animes that you've seen? Is it a top 5, a top 3? Is it good to consider as a next gen big 3 in your eyes and in your opinion? So without further ado, I know we had a long intro here today because I'm not going to be doing too much talking. I'm going to let him go ahead and take over here. Let's get into it.
Transformations. They've led to some of the hypest moments in all of anime. Whether it was Goku unlocking Super Saiyan for the first time, Naruto unlocking KCM2 or Baryon mode, or Ichigo's final Getsuga Tensho form. Every time a character looks slightly different with a new set of abilities and powers, for some reason appeals to our 8 brains in a way that we can't necessarily describe. But what's the chemical reaction in our brain when a manga about a guy transforming into a monster becomes a manga about a guy permanently transforming into a bigger, stronger monster? Well, that's a question that we're going to be trying to answer today, because chapter 121 of Kaiju No.8 just dropped, and Kafka's been given a new form that apparently far exceeds any level of strength that he had prior, but a level of strength that may be, unfortunately, permanent. Yes, that's right. Chapter 121 is showing us the pinnacle of kaiju power, but at apparently an incredibly steep cost. Thus, today I want to tell you guys everything that you could ever possibly need to know about Kafka's new form, because today we're talking Kafka's new form is broken. But before we get to breaking anything ourselves, guys, here, please, for me, Like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. So, unfortunately, Kaiju No.8's kind of pulling a black clover in these last couple of months. That is to say, in the hypest moments we've ever received in this manga, the manga production has slowed down exponentially. See, for the first 100 or so chapters, Kaiju No.8 was released weekly. However, on the 4th week of every month, we got a .1 chapter. A chapter that was simply constituted of a couple of drawings of key characters from Kaiju No.8. However, those .1 chapters have disappeared. And now, instead of receiving .1 chapters, the releasal of Kaiju No.8 has just become kind of sporadic. It was sometimes as little as 2 weeks between chapters, and sometimes as much as a month between chapters. And this is unfortunate because, for all intents and purposes, it appears as though we're fastly approaching the end of this story. And yet we're receiving some of the hypest moments we've ever gotten from this manga because of how sporadic its release is. Not that many people are talking about it. And I believe no piece of evidence illustrates that point more accurately than the fact that over the last 2 chapters of Kaiju No.8, we've seen Kafka undergo his first transformation since he turned into Kaiju No.8 in chapter 1. That is to say, in 121 chapters of this manga, this is Kafka's first real power-up. Because, well, yes, we've seen things like Kafka going berserk in his battle against Isayao Shinomiya, and berserk once again in the battle against Kaiju No.9. That form is not only kind of dangerous, as it puts Kafka at risk of being taken over by his kaiju, but it's also kind of unreproducible. And in that sense, the difference between Kafka's rage mode and this new form he's unlocked in chapter 120 and 121 is the most accurately comparable to Naruto's KCM1 and KCM2 forms. See, because people forget that Naruto's KCM1 mode was not collaborative with Kurama. Naruto's KCM1 mode leveraged the power of Kurama because Naruto had beaten Kurama in a fight, and therefore Naruto was able to gain access to more of Kurama's chakra than he ever had previously. But because of this, every single time Naruto accessed KCM1, he was running a massive risk because there was a solid possibility that if he used that form for too long, Kurama would be able to take him over. Kafka's rage mode is no different. And ironically, both Naruto and Kafka go about unlocking their heightened form in the same way. As the way that Naruto goes from KCM1 to KCM2 is learning Kurama's name and befriending him, and the way that Kafka gains his, what we'll call, white form is by understanding the pain and anguish that made the Kaiju No.8 kaiju in the first place. And thus, it was understanding that allowed for both Kafka and Naruto to unlock this form. But it doesn't mean that this form is a one-to-one copy of KCM2. No, it's actually incredibly different. Mostly because Naruto's KCM2 form is reversible. See, we learned in chapter 118 the origin of Kafka's kaiju power. See, because throughout the entirety of Kaiju No.8's manga, there's been some foreshadowing surrounding samurai. And we learned in chapter 116, 117, and 118, finally, why these masked samurai kept showing up all throughout the story. See, apparently the ancestral word-righty power that cuts people in half of Kaiju No.9 is something that's manifested over multiple different generations. And the last and most pertinent time that Kaiju No.9 rose to power and fought against humanity in the 1600s, when the kaiju hunters of the time were armed with nothing more than nagitana. And thus, as Kafka was injected into the boots of a samurai trying to battle against these kaiju in this era, as they used a more primitive version of kaiju armor that leaked away their life force but made them strong and angry, Kafka was inserted onto a battlefield filled with the gore and strewn bodies of samurai throwing their lives at a kaiju in hopes of defeating it. And while their massive numbers were usually enough to cut these kaiju down, when Kaiju No.9 came to town, that wasn't the case. And thus, for 100 days, the event known as the Great Catastrophe reigned, as Kaiju No.9 ripped through all of Japan like wrapping paper on a present. And thus, the anger, disappointment, and resentment from all of the samurai who fell in combat against Kaiju No.9 had all of those negative feelings grow in a mass amalgamation around the heart of the one samurai we keep seeing time and time again. And when that massive negative emotions mingled with the ley lines deep underground. And before we move any further, a ley line is kind of a made-up pseudoscience thing. In the early 20th century, a guy by the name of Alfred Watkins, who was an amateur archaeologist and photographer, claimed that he saw a grid of straight lines in the English countryside. And thus, from this observation, said that ancient peoples built these energy pathways essentially for transportation. And thus, the idea was extrapolated out further to say that there are ley lines all across the globe that run energy from important points to other important points. As people claim that these ley lines connect things like Stonehenge, the pyramids of Giza, Machu Picchu, and Ayers Rock. So basically what the samurai was saying here is that all of this massive negative emotions interacted with the energy lines of the world. And what was created from that was the kaiju that we saw fly into Kafka's mouth in episode 1. A mass of all the grudges of the past samurai who were defeated in battle against Kaiju number 9. And thus that's why this kaiju not only chose Kafka, because Kafka was battling against the kaiju, but also why this kaiju holds so much power in its tiny stature, because it's not a kaiju in the traditional sense. It actually doesn't even technically have a physical form, and thus for the first 118 and a half chapters of Kafka's time as our MC of this story, Kafka has been leveraging the power of this grudge kaiju. However, because in Kafka's final battle against Kaiju number 9, Kafka gets his kaiju core destroyed, he has to make a deal with the samurai at the core of his kaiju. A deal that, like with Denji and Pochita, bonds these two entities forever. See, because with the lack of a kaiju core, a kaiju cannot survive. It's like a kaiju's heart. And thus, in order to replace this lost kaiju core, the samurai at the center of the kaiju makes Kafka a deal. That Kafka will be able to find enough power to defeat Kaiju number 9 in combat so long as he gives the kaiju his heart. That is to say that Kafka has to hand over his heart to the amalgamation kaiju inside of him and make his heart the new kaiju core. And thus, in that moment, Kafka's kaiju gives Kafka an ultimatum. Accept your heart back as your own and revert into being a human, or turn your heart into a core and become a beast. But if Kafka accepts to turn his heart into a core, he'll never be able to revert back to a human. And thus Kafka makes the choice to convert his heart into a core, meaning he's given up on his humanity. And in that moment, the samurai inside of him takes his heart and monsterizes it. And as Kafka shoves that core into his chest, lightning fires out of his eyes as power pulses through his veins. Now, when Kafka returns to life in chapter 119 and chapter 120, he comes back in his standard kaiju form. However, in this standard kaiju form, Kafka appears to be much more powerful. Powerful enough to blast Kaiju number 9 away with a punch, and to shirk off one of Kaiju number 9's little cross-lined attack word thingies. But it's not until the end of chapter 120 that we see the next form that Kafka has unlocked by monsterizing his heart. A form that I've come to know as Kaiju's white kaiju form. And it's that white kaiju form we see breaking into combat in chapter 121. Now, rather interestingly, in the beginning of this chapter, when the kaiju identification team tries to identify just what's going on with Kafka, they yell that Kaiju number 8 is changing forms, but his wavelengths aren't kaiju or human. They're something in between. A totally unknown life form. And in this moment, this white form kaiju breaks out of the shell of its former self, with the literal pieces of Kafka's old skin falling down around him. And it's in this moment that the kaiju identification team realizes that it can't measure the fortitude of Kafka's new form, which means apparently his fortitude is now over 10. Now, if you're one of those people who hates it when somebody in anime can punch at 120%, because if you can punch at 120%, that's just your 100%, then I got good news for you. Kafka going over a 10 in magnitude does not mean he's accessed more than 100% of his power. It's revealed in this moment that the magnitude with which kaijus are measured is put on a 1 to 10 scale, because if a kaiju is able to reach 10 or higher, human civilization has nothing they can do to defeat it. So a kaiju existing over a magnitude of 10 is not an impossibility. It's just that once a kaiju hits a fortitude of 10 or higher, humanity's got nothing they can do other than roll over and die.
That's crazy.
The idea of Kafka reaching a fortitude of above 10 is not all that crazy, but you consider the fact in literally chapter 7 of this manga, he was measured at having a fortitude of 9.8. And while yes, he takes multiple steps back after hitting that 9.8 and has to struggle to get back to that higher fortitude, it was early established that Kafka, with the power of Kaiju number 8, had an unprecedented amount of power. A break the scale kind of amount of power. However, Kafka is not the only kaiju on the battlefield with a fortitude of above 10, because Kaiju number 9's fortitude is also broken that big 10.0 scale. And therefore, both of these kaiju weren't actively trying to kill each other, humanity would be basically extinct. And to take that thought process even one step further, if Kafka isn't successful in this battle against Kaiju number 9, humanity is also basically extinct. Because if Kaiju number 9 has a fortitude of over 10, and there's nobody else with a fortitude over 10, There's nothing anybody can do to stop it. However, it's at this moment that Kafka puts everybody's minds at ease as he realizes that the shockwaves from his new transformation destroyed 2 drones that were watching the fight from above, which shocks everybody who's watching because this new monsterized version of Kafka has all the same human mannerisms as Kafka. And thus Kafka says to all of those listening, I racked up this debt. I'll be sure to work it off, which puts everybody, Mina most importantly, at ease. Now, at this point, everybody begins to speculate about just what happened to Kafka, as everyone identifies that this new form is separate from the form that he gets when he goes berserk. But before anybody can come to any real concrete conclusions, we cut back to Kafka's POV, as we see him standing over a bubbling bed of water. And it's revealed that this bubbling mass that he's standing on are all of the negative emotions of those killed by Kaiju number 9. Regret, resentment, rage, bitterness, bubbling into him as an infinite jet black fuel source. Now, this is framed in a pretty interesting way. It's said that these emotions act as an indistinguishable fuel for Kaiju number 8. That is to say that Kaiju number 8, in a sense, has an infinite energy source. So long as there is this inextinguishable pit of black fuel inside of Kaiju number 8, Kaiju number 8 can continue on fighting. Now, this could mean 2 things depending on how you look at it. One, this could mean that Kafka's never going to run out of energy in this battle against Kaiju number 9, and if Kafka never runs out of energy as Kaiju number 8, then it probably is true that he'll never revert back to his human form. Or you could go for a slightly more nuanced approach and say, oh, the fact that Kaiju number 8 is singularly motivated by the hate, regret, and bitterness of all of these samurai who died at the hands of Kaiju number 9 could mean that once Kaiju number 9 is defeated and these emotions are laid to rest, that Kaiju number 8 could also possibly cease to exist. Because, like,
that's literally what I was about to say. Kind of along those lines. I was going to say more or less like it's going to be like, it's sounding more and more like Baryon mode. Once he wins, there's no more hate. All that power and stuff will disperse. He will lose all that. He'll go back to being human and live normal. That's what it's sounding like. That's where I would lean my guess towards. Let me know what your guys' guess down before, but it's sounding more and more, if I had to compare it to something, it sounds more and more like Baryon mode.
Like it was established in chapter 118, Kaiju number 8 technically doesn't have a physical form. And thus I believe this moment is actually more likely telling us that after Kaiju number 9 is defeated, that Kafka will revert back to being a human because Kaiju number 8 will no longer need to exist. But who's to say? For the meanwhile, let's watch the most ripped version of Kafka we've ever seen beat down on Kaiju number 9. Because that is exactly what happens as Kafka releases a wave of energy. And in this moment, as Kaiju number 9 looks at Kafka, it sees the army of samurai screaming, ready for combat. And because of that, it begins to laugh, possibly reminiscing about the greatest 100 days of its life where prior to running out of energy, it was allowed to rip through Japan with no consequences. And thus in response to Kafka's release of energy, it explodes forth with energy, dashing towards him and grabbing Kafka by the face with so much force that it immediately levels an entire city block. And as debris is sent at all of the soldiers left on the battlefield, we see in actuality that Kafka has barely moved and is pointing at a tower off in the distance and telling Kaiju number 9, hey, if we fight here, everybody will get caught up in it. Let's fight over there. Now, this blow didn't do nothing to Kafka. It does appear to have drawn blood from his forehead, but Kafka does a bit more as he turns to Kaiju number 9 and throws a right straight directly into his face that blasts him back to the tower that Kafka wants to fight at. And the chapter ends with a full view of Kafka's new form as he rotates his shoulder and says, I suppose I should get going then. So what's the secret with this new form? How many new abilities will come with it? And just how much stronger is Kafka now? Well, we don't really have concrete answers for any of those questions. We know that this form came about by Kafka giving up his heart to monsterize it into a core. His magnitude has been identified as above 10, but for all we know, it could be 10.1 and only be 0.3 points higher than he was prior. And since Kaiju Fortitude levels don't scale like the Richter scale, that is to say, logarithmically, the difference between a 9.8 and a 10.1 is kind of negligible. I mean, a 0.7 in Kaiju rating has been identified as a pretty big deal previously, as when Kaiju number 10 went from an 8.3 to a 9.0, he was regarded in a completely different classification of threat. And even Kaiju number 9 going from an 8.5 to a 9 was seen as a big step forward. So if Kafka has only made a half point of difference in his fortitude rating, it's just now above 10 and therefore unmeasurable, that would still be a pretty big deal. But for all we know, Kafka could be an 11 or a 12 or a 13. And as Kafka now seems significantly stronger than Kaiju number 9, being able to tank Kaiju number 9's strongest move, the double crossword slashy thing in his base form prior to changing, that is, and shrug it off with a minimal amount of damage that he was able to regenerate almost instantaneously, speaks to the fact that if Kaiju number 9 is above 10.0, that Kaiju number 8 is now probably significantly over 10.0. Now, as to whether or not Kafka is going to get any new moves in this form, I can't say. I could possibly see a circumstance in which Kafka is able to generate some kind of Nagitana-esque weapon to draw even more connections between him and his samurai ancestors. But for the moment, all we've seen from this new form of Kafka is what we've been seeing from Kafka the entirety of Kaiju number 8, which is
his hands.
Big old powerful punchies. But I do also foresee a future where Kafka leans on some of the other abilities that we've seen him use 1 or 2 times, like his energy roar or his energy blast that allows him to propel himself with blasts of energy. On top of that, some people believe that the reason that Kafka was able to survive the slashing attack of Kaiju number 8 in chapter 120 is that Kafka now has a force field-esque ability. Similar to the power that Kaiju number 9 has through the consumption of Kaiju number 2, it was revealed that when Kafka was slashed by Kaiju number 9's attack, that Kafka has a force field around his core, and thus the usage of this force field outside of surrounding his core may come into play with this new form. But for the moment, that's genuinely all we know about Kafka's new break onto the scene as the most powerful entity in his universe. But I'm curious to hear from you guys. How do you feel about this new chapter, Kafka's new form, and what do you think we're going to see from him in future chapters? Let me know in the comments.
Let me know down in the comments below too, man. I gotta say, this is why I'm not afraid of leaks, bro. It's got me way more hyped and excited for that to get animated for season 3, 4, whatever needs to come out next to get everything popping. Hey, I'm excited for it, bro. Straight hands. Apparently, we're gonna see Kafka die somewhat and then come back to life stronger. How they animate that, how the fight looks and everything, and just being able to tank a shot to the face, get a little drop of blood, but then hit him, be able to be like, nah, we're gonna go fight over there. Punch you, send you to the location that he just told you to go to. Like, imagine that, bro. You were in a fight, you hit a dude, he eats the punch, says, nah, we're gonna go fight over there like a couple blocks over, hits you with a right hook, and you go flying to the right block over. But at that point, you might as well just go and get up and be like, never mind, you got it. I promise I ain't coming back over here no more, and just leave town. Go ahead and move states, actually. Matter of fact, go ahead and go to a different country. Go ahead and go to the UK. Go ahead and leave real quick, bro, because you might as well not come back. It's over for you. But let me know what you guys think of Kafka's new form, man. What do you guys think about Kaiju number 8? Where is it at as far as your top anime, big 3 anime, and just overall, how do you rank the anime in general, bro? I like it. I love anime with hands. Sports animes are my favorites too as well. So those are kind of like the 2 that I love the most. So when you're going to show us with some hands and good boxing scenes, I'm all for it. But I'll catch you guys in the next video, man. It's been another Anime Tuesday. If you guys want more anime videos and more content throughout the week, let me know, and we'll bring more to you. But I'll check you guys in the next video. It's me, boy, Sean, this movie, aka Black Okage, Black Avatar, aka King Leo, aka Kaiju number, I guess what, the last one was 9. No, I'm going to separate myself a little bit. Kaiju number 11. You know what I'm saying? It's one of my favorite numbers. It's what I play football in a lot. So Kaiju number 11 signing out. Peace.